the strike by Israel or by the United States.
Mr. Firzli, President Trump has now publicly set total dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program as his red line. What does this shift mean for the future of the talks, do you think?
I think we're witnessing a game of shadows or a tournament of shadows, by which I mean it's typical of Cold Wars when you have, big, gigantic global wars. And in the 19th century, it was the race between Russia and England. Today, it's the new Cold War pitting China against Trump's America. When you have that situation, many things happen behind the surface. So the situation is very complex and shadowy. To make a long story short, in my opinion, what we saw, what we saw recently with the ousting of Michael Waltz is a reflection of these shadows brewing under the surface. I think in reality, Trump himself and J.D. Vance, so the core of the Trump White House, they are realists and even ultra-realists. So they're very cynical about Iran and they're very cynical about the world. They look at the world in a very quote-unquote rational Machiavellian manner. They have not many preconceived ideas about, good and bad, black or white. They're very pragmatic, radical pragmatists. And they don't necessarily want to go the aggressive way towards Iran. That is the reality of Trump. Now, verbally, when he speaks to the media, when they speak to the media, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are very careful. So officially, their stance on Iran is a tough stance. So officially, they say there's no way we would accept blah, 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 any hint or shade or form, even microscopically, of nuclear plants in Iran with any dual-use civilian military potential. That's the official line.
Okay.
In reality, I think that they're willing to negotiate with Iran pragmatically. And if Iran sticks to a purely civilian use of its nuclear plant with an enhanced international, presence to double check, some supervision from the international nuclear energy experts, being allowed free access to all the nuclear facilities, etc. I think if the Iranian regime accepts all that, I think the White House would be happy to strike a deal, quote unquote, with Iran, because they think that Iran is fairly important. They think it's a pivot nation. It's a second level or middle-sized power, but it plays a pivotal role from a geostrategic perspective. Remember, in that great China versus America war.
Mr. Firzli, let's move to our other guest, Mr. Ezz Edin. And reports, sir, reveal that the Israeli interference in the U.S. policymaking towards Iran led to the dismissal of the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. How do you interpret this, sir?
Absolutely. The matter is very clear. The U.S. administration is very keen. Its main ally in the Middle East, which is Israel. Yet there are several parties within the U.S. administration do not wish but for the U.S. resolution to be on the head and not to, or rather to avoid any involvement of U.S. into open wars or any matters that would damage the American budget. Most importantly, the military element, particularly the Sixth Fleet and the Navy, in addition to the other matter which I consider is a conflict between the new U.S. administration wings. I do not say that due to the lack of expertise with respect to the US administration, but there is some sort of a balance that President Trump wishes to achieve in order to avoid the damages of the US interest in the Gulf specifically. As we know, if military attacks against Iran would lead to a retaliation could be into Israel. That would develop in the worst scenario into the American bases in the Gulf, and that will create a great shock to the strategy of energy. Trump's calculations, and I specifically, are most economically. The president never wishes to kill the chicken that produces golds. I mean, its interest in the Middle East and the Gulf area. So the dismissal of Walls as a national security consultant is a clear message that the ultimate decision is solely in the hands of US and not Israel. So, of course, this good resolution with respect to the matter and do not ignite the matter either in the Middle East or with respect to the US administration inside. And I think that there are several changes in the personnel of US administration in the upcoming period with the escalation differences between the wings inside the US administration.
Let's go back to Mr. Firzli. The US, sir, has imposed new sanctions on companies linked to Iranian oil trade. How do you think do such measures affect the negotiation process? And in your opinion, do you think it's the reason why the talks stalled, or are there any other reasons you might think of?
So once again, I think it's only on the surface. So on the surface, as a negotiation tactics, Trump is playing tough on Iran, not because he wants to hurt them or strike them, because he wants them to make middle-of-the-road concessions. And I think Trump is eager to sign a deal with them. That's why he's putting pressure on them commercially, using, oil equipment sanctions. In reality, he wants to sit with them. He doesn't want to change the regime. He thinks that if they are smart, the Iranian mullahs will come to the table and negotiate and make concessions. Why am I saying so? For a very simple reason, once again, we have come full circle. So the world has come full circle. Benjamin Netanyahu, he has a hardline stance on Iran.
Yes.
He wants regime change. He wants America to strike Iran. And that was the position of some people in Washington, like, Mike Waltz. And the fact that Mike Waltz was forced to resign, the fact that he was pushed out, says a lot about Trump's thinking.
Okay.
His thinking is not hardline. Why have we come full circle? Because Netanyahu himself started his career.
But then, sorry, sir, to cut you, but then why do you think would be the reason why are the talks actually stalled? They've been postponed, the fourth round.
Because it takes time, because it's not easy. Okay. These are very difficult, very complicated talks, and they won't come easy. So if and when the Iranians make a few concessions,